I think we can go ahead and get started then for everyone in here. Hopefully some people are going to filter in as we get going. So just wanted to start it by welcoming and thanking all of you for taking time to join us. So just to give a little bit of background on our panel, we have joining us Chris Yoder, who is the Director of Youth Instruction at Scioto Country Club. Chris is also the 2022 Southern Ohio PGA Teacher and Coach of the Year. And we have Brad Smith, who is a Director of Instruction at Heatherwoode Golf Club. Brad was the 2016 and 2022 Southern Ohio PGA Teacher and Coach of the Year. And finally, we have Gene Powell, who is the Director of Instruction at Four Bridges Country Club. He was the 2016 Teacher and Coach of the Year. So I think I had that mixed up. Brad, you must have been 2014 and 2020.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, handwriting got a little messy earlier today. So thank you to everyone who's joining us. Hopefully you guys all have a lot of good information here and there's a lot of good takeaways. So we'll get started with some of our topics. This will be open for all three of our panelists. Feel free to chime in however you see fit. So our first one would be, how should our juniors and their parents go about creating an off-season plan? Like, what are some good things to focus on? How can they continue to improve throughout the off-season?
Anybody want to jump in?
Well, I'll be glad to go. That's all right. I think the first thing is they need to evaluate what they did last season, and then and be truthful and be honest with themselves, and set some new goals. See if what goals they have done, and where they want to go. And that'd be the first thing is set that plan and put it in writing. Don't be afraid to put it in writing. I'm a big believer in doing calendars for that plan, for that off-season plan. Then you can kind of put everything on there, whether it's your schoolwork, your workouts, hitting golf balls, lessons, even your free time, time you're going to spend some time with your friends and that kind of thing, putting on the carpet, that kind of stuff. And then start looking at tournaments, set up your tournament schedule to what it's going to look like in the summer. And I do think, you need to start thinking of colleges. I think there's too many that wait too long. And being a college coach for so many years, I think that's part of, they wait till their junior or senior year, and recruiting. If you're looking at playing at the highest level, you probably should be doing that a little bit earlier. And I know maybe your games aren't maybe at that level yet, but there's a point where it will be, and then you're already behind the 8 ball. So start thinking about colleges, where you want to go. If you want to go to a big school, little school, if you want to live, eat, and breathe golf, or if you want to maybe just play golf and have a college experience, start looking at some of that stuff. I suppose you can reach out to coaches. They can't respond back to you until the June 15th after your sophomore year. So at that point, they can get back with you. But there doesn't mean that you can't still call them and leave messages, and do some other things like, start building a resume, put all your information together. And so they're aware of you a little bit. But I think that has a lot to do with it if you're looking at playing college golf anyways. And then, even reaching out to some of those coaches, or at least sending them email what your schedule is going to be like, down the road, where you're playing. Like, you may be playing in a certain area where that coach works, and that's the school you want to go to. So you may want to kind of put it out there, and then they can come watch you. And I think those are some of the things that you probably ought to be looking at. But I'm a big believer in writing it down, calendars and that kind of thing, because it makes it a little bit more solid, because we can all say, oh, I'm going to go work out. But if you have a calendar that says, this is what I'm going to do, and this is the day I'm going to go do it, it puts a little bit more, I guess, meaning you have to go do it. And until your parents maybe tell you to do it. But when you get to college or whatever, you're going to have to do some of that stuff on your own. And so why not do it and learn it now? So that's kind of how I feel about the off-season plan.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about that plan, I agree. Everything very well said, Brad. But in addition to that, I would add, if you're working on something specific in your game, to take advantage of this time. Being up in the Midwest, it's much different than being down in Florida or being where you can play 365 days out of the year. If you have some things that you need to work on, now's the time to do that heavy lifting. So come spring, summer, that is in the rearview mirror versus trying to play competitively and making swing changes, whether it's full swing, short game, whatever, doesn't really matter. Get that work done now in the off season. Don't wait. I think too many people come out and it's like March, April is like, okay, let me get going. If you're going to try to play competitively, it's too late. That ship has sailed because now you got to play. And so I think that often gets pushed back, and then you're trying to scramble and do both. Doesn't work very well typically.
True.
Yeah, thank you guys. Great information there. And Brad, I apologize. My internet connection got lost partway through when you were talking. So if I repeat something,
right.
I apologize for that. But yeah, it's a great point you all bring up. I can't tell you how many students come to me in June or July and like, I want to get ready for the high school season. Like, well, there's kids that have been getting ready since the end of the previous season, right? And that was always my mindset. I played high school golf and collegiate golf, and when it came to the off season, it can be a quiet, lonely time when that right after the state tournament or at the end of your tournament, your last tournament of the year, it seems like it's so far off next year. But let me tell you, it comes quick. And so try to carry that mindset of this is the improvement season. And if I felt like I was behind the game, and where it's to Brad's point of self-reflecting on the year and how everything went, if I felt as a player that I'm behind where I wanted to be, that was the time where I could play catch up and catch up to those other kids. And if I felt reflecting on the year, it was a great year and I felt like I was ahead of the game, then great. That was the time of year where I could even push myself and widen that gap. So I call it's the time of year to close the gap or widen that gap, depending on, the season that you had before. But yeah, it starts, and it doesn't have to be hours upon hours a day in the off season. 15 minutes here, 30 minutes the next day, putting that plan together. All those little bits that you do each and every day add up to a lot over time. We don't want to have the cram sessions where we're, right before the tournament, right before tryouts. We've all seen the panic, in students and kids that time of year. Let's put that preparation in ahead of time, and 15 minutes a day. I'm going to focus on speeds, super speed 6 today. Tomorrow, I'm going to work on, it might be my grip or a big off season goal that I have. And I'm going to watch a sports game, football game, movie, a TV show, and I'm going to hold a club and I'm just going to work on my grip. So think outside of the box. It doesn't have to be ball after ball after ball session. You can read a book on mental game, mental approach. And so little bits over time add up to a lot.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Chris, to even hit that point hard. The research shows that if you're going to learn, especially a motor skill, but this is true cognitive learning as well, but certainly as a motor skill, it's the consistent small practice sessions that really develop the habit. Right, to your point, a cram session doesn't work. Certainly maybe you get a short-term bump in that, but it doesn't create lasting change. So it's doing the little things at home on a regular basis, and then when you do get the opportunity or you want to go hit golf balls and do more and expand that a session, that's wonderful. But if you say, I think too many people put our self-imposed obstacles in front of them. oh, I can't go out and hit golf balls, so therefore I'm not going to do anything.
Right.
And I think that's such a mistake, because then all of a sudden it's 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 days, and we haven't done anything. And that's not how we develop skills. So we develop skills by doing short, regular practice sessions. The more consistent they are, the better, as far as how frequently they do. We talk about doing homework and doing something at home every day, to your point with a grip, watching television. That's excellent. Put a club in your hand, go putt on the carpet, do whatever you need to do. And that's what, our joke that we always talk about is, which day are we supposed to practice? And the answer is every day. Every day is my favorite day for practice. And so get out there and do something, even if it's 10 minutes, that's valuable. It doesn't have to be that big practice session.
That's funny you say that, because I tell a lot of my students, because they always say, like you said, the weather is bad, I can't get out to hit golf balls, and you guys are exactly right. And I'll say, can you give me 2 minutes a day? And they go, 2 minutes a day? Oh, yeah, of course I can give you 2 minutes a day. And I go, okay, I want you to stand in front of the mirror with your arms crossed and work your turn. Or I want you to take a club in your hands and do that, regrip it. Every commercial you do this. So you're spot on, man. And I
we
tell
don't
you,
watch commercials anymore. I ruined it.
you're streaming stuff. I get it. So the big thing is, if they're doing that a minute or two a day, and I'll do it one time with them, and I'll set my stopwatch, and they go, is that really a minute? That's the longest time in history. And I go, I know. And if you did that, and I question to have them, or I have them do it, and they'll come back a week later, and I'm like, wow, you really practiced. And they go, no, I didn't go hit golf balls. And I said, no, you practiced, because your grip is spot on now. And they go, yeah, I just did that minute a day thing. And I go, oh my God, but in the wintertime, you have to be creative, like you guys are talking about. Big believer in that. Yeah.
Well, I love that. And, posture. Let's talk about posture for a second. So I'll go in front of a window in the back in our kitchen area. We've got a sliding door, and my wife and kids think I'm nuts and crazy, but I'll go in front of that window. Then you can see your reflection, and I'll just be looking. I'll be focused on my posture. And like you said, Brad, it might be your pivot or your turn, your arms crossed against your chest, and you're in that mirror or that reflection of that window for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and you're working on that. So that's, find a coach, find an instructor if you need some direction and guidelines on that, because we can certainly help put that program together for you.
Yeah, I thought it was only my wife that thought I was crazy doing that, so that's good.
Not in this industry.
The other thing I do want to say real quick, I'm a big believer in playing multiple sports, right? Develop the athlete first, golfer second, I think is really, really important. So when you all are hearing this, we're not saying, it's got to be golf all the time. What we're saying is keep the golf club close by. So if you play basketball in the wintertime, I would encourage that. But like we said, find that 15, 20, 25 minutes, keep golf close by. What we want to avoid is hanging the clubs up for 6 months, 7 months, and then the month of May rolls around and you get back into golf. So big believer in developing the athlete, play those multiple sports, but in doing so, keep golf close by.
Well said.
Yeah, like what you're saying, I have a swimmer that I work with, and he's doing swimming now and that kind of thing, and having a little trouble with a certain thing, and his dad came in and he said, have you seen anything different? And I go, yeah, he's turning through it differently. He's getting into his lead hip a little differently now. And he says while he's waiting around for swimming, he's making that move, like you were saying, in the mirror or whatever, but he's just doing it, in a swimsuit, and he's just kind of making that turn. And he says, I got a picture of him doing that while he's, waiting to swim. And so be creative. I mean, it works. And play those other sports, because that helps too.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, great. I think there was a lot of very, very good information there for everyone. Kind of piggybacking off that, I know we covered a good amount of it, but any extra like tips for how you can improve in the winter, whether it's physical things like grip, posture, like you discussed, or even something like fitness related, or even just improving mentally on the golf course to get yourself in a better mindset to compete.
Yeah, I'd say all that, I mean, I think we don't spend enough time on the mental emotional side, and that's not, everybody wants to be able to be in the right mind state and be emotionally in the right space when they're on the golf course, but they don't take any time to work on that in the off season or even just any other time for that matter. And it doesn't just happen. It is a skill just like anything else. So there's a number of things that you can do from that standpoint as far as research, reading, meditation, you name it. There's a lot of avenues you can go down. And I separate, it's semantics, but I separate mental and emotional because I think that while they overlap, there are different skill sets involved in the two of them. But I think developing that skill set in the off season is helpful. And then even physically, I mean, that's the time to really take care of your body and get it ready, get it tuned up, increase mobility, strength, being able to do that stuff in the winter so that you're ahead of the game when you're playing. It's hard to stay on top of that. We're talking to junior golfers that are in school. They're trying to play maybe multiple sports, but certainly playing golf and then practicing and then trying to take care of their body, trying to take care of nutrition and hydration and sleep. I mean, there's a lot going on, when they're sitting, especially during the school year, sitting in a desk for, 7.5, 8 hours. So there's a lot going on. So take advantage of the downtime to get your body and your mind right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all that stuff. I mean, it's I used to have, when I coached at UD, I used to have our players come in, and I had a library there, and they had to read at least one mental book during the winter time. So I'm a big believer in what Gina's saying is read. Take an hour and read something on the mental, part of the game. The big thing I like to try to get my players do is I want them to be more comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's a hard thing to do. You could do that by playing golf when it's cold, when it's miserable out, if it's raining or whatever, but you got to find ways of doing that. I had one student that just was very fearful of doing anything on her own. So I said, well, you order food out, right? So, and she goes, yeah. But I said, who calls in to order it? Well, my parents do. And I said, what happens if you did that? And she kind of freaked out on me. And I said, that would be really good for you to do to build some confidence. I mean, these little steps that you make to build confidence will actually help you in the full game. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. But I think what happens is sometimes we're afraid of doing things, and you have to kind of push yourself out of that comfort zone and get comfortable being uncomfortable, because the better you get at that, you're gonna do well. I'm a big believer in journaling, and journaling can help on the mental part and on the confidence and the emotions, because you're being more aware of yourself, of what's going on, and you'll find ways of that work for you, and then as you journal, you'll start seeing some of that stuff. Big believer in the workout. Try to find a TPI person or a trainer, that kind of thing, someone that knows what they're doing instead of you just going and working out. Try to find something like that that'll help. I'm a big believer in visualization of courses that you're going to play. And one thing you can do in the wintertime is maybe not play, but let's say there's snow on the ground. You could actually walk the golf course that you're going to be playing down the road in the spring or summer, and kind of plan out where you want to be hitting the ball. And you don't even have to hit a shot. Just bundle up and go out and walk in the snow and say, this is where it's going to be. This is where it's going to be. I know it sounds crazy, but it's just visualization of where you want to be. And I think one other thing is maybe, check your clubs, make sure the loft and lies are right, put new grips on them. God, I see this all the time. They wait till summer, and then they have these slick grips. you probably could get them done before you go out in the spring and have them done before so you're ready to go. But yeah, I think anything you can do, once again, it comes down to being creativity, the creativity of trying to build your swing, find things, be way ahead of everything, like the details, be more detailed into everything. Write out game plans for the golf courses. With technology, you can look at a GPS, and you can kind of plan out certain shots. Like I said, walk the golf courses, but you can actually write it out. This is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to hit. This is probably the club I'm going to be hitting. This is where I want to be on the green. This is the safe side, that kind of thing. But anything you do on that end is going to pay off big time. And you just got to go above and beyond if you want to be very competitive, above and beyond what other people do.
Brad, I think, and Gene, I think that's all great. Awesome stuff. And I'm glad you brought up the equipment, because the off season is a great time of year to self-reflect on your equipment. And you might be a junior who just is going through a big growth spurt. And so let's get fit for those clubs and different shafts. Your speed might have increased, 10 miles an hour and need some different shafts. But so the equipment analysis is a great thing that you can do in the off season. Starting to put together your tournaments for the next, the upcoming year, and put that plan together. Put your tournament schedule together. Get out, all the different tours and just get a big spreadsheet going on a calendar. And it's like a giant puzzle. But start planning and preparing for your tournaments. I do think in the wintertime it is good if you're able to find a tournament or two to play in. Because again, when you finish in, if you're a high school golfer and you finish a state tournament, it might be, it's 6 months before spring comes around. So what's going to keep you motivated and engaged? Let's find a tournament. And that might be something in January or December. You might travel down to North Carolina. But if you've put something out there, that'll help you to stay motivated, to stay on point with your practice. So you don't have to play a tournament every week or every month, but if you found a couple tournaments to play in the off season, I think that's a great way to kind of stay on task with your practice and your play and your motivation.
Agreed.
Great.
Real quick, Alex, can I just add one little thing? Yeah, so I'd like what, Brad, you were talking about walking the golf course. Another way to do that is use Google Earth. Use Google Earth, put the golf course in there. You can go through the entire hole by hole. There's a measure tool in there. If you know how far you hit your driver, you can see where your ball will be landing. Get your know your dispersion patterns on your shots, where you're hitting. So you can use Google Earth, which you should be using for prep for practice rounds anyway. But you can map out golf courses well in advance. So that's a great thing to do. And then also, since talking to young players playing on the junior tour, be careful who you're copying. I think that there's it's often certainly at the high school level, we see that somebody might be somebody who performs well, but they might not have the best practices. But then there's an assumption because they perform well that they do have the proper practices. They're doing the right things to prepare. They're doing that. And so then you start following down a path that maybe isn't the right path. So just be careful with that as a junior golfer, that you're copying or you're learning from people that are going to be able to help you. And it's just something that you got to be careful with, because just because somebody's able to perform doesn't mean they're necessarily doing it the right way. At some point that probably isn't going to happen, because it's going to, things will change, and then all of a sudden they're not prepared for it. I'm trying to say that politically correct. Is that about right, Brad?
No, that's good. I think I totally agree. That is, spot on. Yeah. Yeah. The other one, Gene, is I don't know if you've ever used this for some of your students, Pro Visualizer. Has anyone used that?
I haven't used that one.
I have used that one. That's great. Yes.
Yeah. So Pro Visualizer, it's a free. You have to use it on a computer. You can't use it on an iPad. I don't believe. At least I couldn't use it. But you can put in your yardages that you hit certain clubs. It'll give you. It'll do all that, just exactly what you're saying. So it's kind of nice. And it's free.
Well, great. Before we start going to our next topic, I just want to jump back real quick. Brad, you had mentioned you had your players at UD read books to improve their mental game. Do you have any sort of recommendations for something that a junior could read to help grow that?
I think they all say the same thing, kind of. It's all I'm big in Dr. Rotella, of course. The 15th Club, I think it's called. That one, he almost apologized for his other books, because he actually gives you more ways of handling some of the things you go through. The other one that I really like that gets you understanding how the mind works is with Winning in Mind. I'm big on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you understand why you do what you do, it really helps you get better. Zen Golf, and I mean, there's plenty of others out there. I think one of the first ones I read was The Inner Game of Golf or something like that. I think by Tim Holloway, I think it is. I think he does a tennis one also. But those are, I mean, they all kind of, they say the same thing. But now there's so many other ways of getting the job done. And like Gene was saying, I think there's more the mental part of it, and there's more of the emotional part of it. And a lot of times you see these younger players, they're very emotional. They get kind of upset, and then they lose focus. And then I think the mental part of it, of course, is learning how to stay focused so you don't have the negative thoughts pop in, and so you don't make those mental mistakes. You're actually planning your round for each hole, your game plan, and you're looking at everything. You're looking at the lie, the trajectory that you want, the distance, the environment, and those are things that I think you learn at a higher level. And I'm seeing more and more high school players understand more about that. And I think sometimes they get to the college level and they haven't been through that. So, you need to know what the ball does because of the weather. And if it's cold, if it's 40 degrees, it's, it could be like one club difference. There's formulas that you can use on all that. But I think those are some things that probably ought to start looking at besides the books, and maybe some of the books tell you some of that stuff too. But yeah, they read a lot of the mental books. I'm big on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and don't limit yourself to golf. Go look into other disciplines.
Yeah, that's good.
So many other. So in golf, there's so many books on mechanics. In other sports, there's a whole lot where it's a much broader, it's a little bit more horizontal as far as what it is. In golf, it's like we see all these swing books, and yeah, there's definitely some of the mental books as well, but don't be afraid to jump into other disciplines, because you're going to learn an awful lot in other disciplines.
Well, yeah, even strategies. I mean, there's some good things on strategies, or even understanding, like you're saying, understanding how architects build golf clubs, or build golf holes. And if you understand more about that, that helps too. Understanding the drainage pattern and just everything. Just
Sure.
Get creative. Yeah.
Yeah, and from the mental side, you got Brett McCabe, who is one of the most renowned sports psychologists, and his background is baseball. He's a pitcher, and there's a whole lot of similarities in what happens in pitching as it does in golf, because nothing happens until you decide it's going to happen. There's no shot clock. There's no defense. Yeah, there's a time in which you have to play the shot, the time in which you have to throw the ball when you're a pitcher. But at the end of the day, you're the one holding the ball, and nothing happens until you say so. That mental space is much different than it is to be a reactionary position when you're playing defense in basketball, or when you're in the batter's box in baseball. So there's a lot to be learned from other disciplines.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a great point. Really cool.
And for all the juniors out there who are, I don't want to read anything, I promise I've read a handful of those books. They're very easy reads, and there is a lot of very good information in them. So
yeah, and don't feel like
Sorry,
you got to
man.
memorize anything. You're just, whatever you can take from that, you take from it. Just keep learning. Be a lifelong learner.
definitely take notes, do stuff like that. So then jumping into our next topic, I know Chris had mentioned it a little bit in that last conversation, but when it comes to putting together that tournament schedule, what do you have your players look for? I guess what type of events, anything like that? Is there, you want them playing this amount per month, per week, anything like that, or any sort of recommendations to build that schedule?
Let me jump in because I want to say one thing, and then I want to hear from actually both from Chris and Brad, because their experience at the college level. Because I'm interested in hearing what they had to say. The couple things that I would say about schedule is pick your majors. Okay, so go through and say, okay, these are the tournaments that I want to play in for whatever reason that is. It may be because you love the golf course and you have an opportunity to go play that course, or because this is one that I know that is going to get eyeballs from college coaches. Whatever that may be, pick those major events and plan everything else around it. Because what ends up happening is you could literally play almost every day, especially in the summer. So make sure you're picking the events that are important and you're working everything else around that. And then also, as far as the volume of tournaments, you need to know yourself. I had a great player, played in the USAM and multiple times, and US Junior Am, all that. He could play a tournament every day. I had another girl, they were the same grade, they were actually friends, and it came to be June, and I'm talking to her on the lesson tee, and it looked like her eyes were going to roll back in her head because she was just exhausted, and it was June. And I'm like, you're done. Shut it down for 2 weeks. You're not allowed to touch a club for a week, and you certainly can't play anything competitive. And in a week, you can start practicing and playing again, but you just need downtime. So you need to know yourself from that standpoint. But my question to piggyback your question, Alex, to both Chris and Brad is, so a lot of the questions are going to come up. What's important for college recruiting? So when you're talking about a schedule, are there events, are there tournaments, are there geographical locations that you need to be in? What do you recommend for players that are building that schedule out from a college standpoint?
Yeah, Gene, I think that's great stuff there. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into planning a tournament schedule, certainly. And if you want to, for example, if you're a high school kid or a kid that knows that I want to play in the South, I want to play in the Midwest, I want to play out West, well, you need to get in front of those coaches, right? And they need to see you play. So some of your schedule, you're going to have to go to them. You're going to have to find tournaments. If you say, I want to play in the Carolinas, South Carolina, Georgia, down south, you're going to have to go to them more like before they start probably coming to you, right? In other words, so certainly the region that you want to go to college and play becomes very, very important. And then, honestly, I think putting an appropriate schedule together where you have an opportunity to win. I think that a lot of kids want to skip certain steps, and they hear AJGA, right? That's the big tour. Everyone wants to play AJGA. But when I look at it, yes, have your majors, and I love how you describe that, Gene. Have your majors, have your stretch events, have your big events. But then also be put together, and let's just keep it simple math here. Let's go 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 is those stretch events, those majors, those big events. 1/3 of your tournament schedule should be events where you're going to be in the mix, and another third of your tournament should be tournaments where you're expected to win, and you're kind of the man, and so you go there, or the women in that sense. But you go a third, a third, a third. A third of the events, you're showing up and you're expected to win. A third of the events where you show up and you're going to be in the mix. If you play well, you're in the top, 10, top 15, have the potential to win, certainly. And then you have your big major events, and those might be your stretch reach events. But I see a lot of kids that skip a step or two, and let's put that balanced tournament schedule together.
I'd tell you, that's spot on. I think those are really good stuff here, guys. I think as a coach, I think a lot of times you see a lot of different coaches do different things. A lot of them just look at the junior scoreboard, see where people are ranked. So if that's the case, then you could do everything Chris is talking about. Gene's, I love all that stuff. It's perfect. Look for the 2-day tournaments because those are usually you get ranked and that kind of thing. I know Southern Ohio PGA has some of those. Isn't that true, Alex?
Yes, it is. And just to interject real quick, for anyone wondering, that schedule should be coming out within the next week. So keep your eyes open for that.
Good. And I know some of the other tours have that too, but I think those are sometimes you need to look at that kind of stuff. I think as an instructor or coach, also when I'm working with people, I'm like Chris is talking about, I'm looking at, can they actually play in the AJGA? Should they really be doing that? Or is that going to just tear them apart? Maybe they're not ready for that. I've had people that can't afford to go to AJGA, and I get that too. And I think if that's the case, you use that to your advantage when you're talking to a coach. You do what Chris is talking about. You play in some of these events that you do very well in, and of course, you're going to hopefully you have these really low scores or good scores. And then when you talk to the coach, you say, well, my family can't really afford to play in these big events. And so I'm doing this because I want to get better in tournament play. And I know how important that is. So turn it around and use it to your advantage of talking to a coach, saying, hey, this, I like to play in that, but I can't afford that right now, and I can play more tournaments and doing this. And I know these are ranked and maybe the competition isn't as strong, but I did win it and I had the score and played very well. So there's ways of getting that done. And of course, you play high school golf, hopefully you have, you do very well there. But yeah, you can use different things to your advantage. Maybe you play other sports like what Chris is talking about. And you say, my freshman and sophomore year, I played basketball on top of golf. And so I didn't put all my eggs in one basket on the golf part of it. So, but I think a coach will like that because it shows that you understand teams. You understand team sports and you're an athlete. You got good eye and hand coordination. Because sometimes I just see golfers, not to say there's anything wrong with that, but I think there's a point where you have to make a decision on, I want to put all my eggs in this basket and I really want to take it to another level. And I think Gene said this earlier is, you can play other sports and continue to get better even at golf.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you use those things for the college coaches and say, I play, golf, I play, I swim, I do this, I play 3 sports. And I don't think that's a bad thing nowadays. I think a lot of coaches like that. There are a few coaches that want you to live, eat, and breathe golf, and I'm just going to look at those numbers, and your AJGA is the most important thing. So you're going to have coaches like that. But there's a lot of coaches out there that are looking at everything. So, they want a good person that maybe is involved in the church or maybe involved in the community, doing things on their own. I think those are some things that you need to kind of really look at and, widen your resume a little bit more on a lot of other things. So,
Brad, I think that's a great point, and I want to piggyback, and hopefully I'm not going on a tangent here on this, but you know, when it comes to college golf, coaches are going to be looking for, as you mentioned, what kind of a student is this person as well? Yes, player, but there's a great video Nick Saban has out there on ands and buts. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but Nick Saban talks about, you go through a kid's specs, and obviously he was talking about football in this case, and then you get to the end, and is it but he doesn't have good grades, but he gets in trouble, but, or do you get to the end of the list and is this an and person where, and he has great A's, he's about great grades, a great student, a good person in the community, right? So that becomes very, very important. Academics, extremely important, because that's going to open the doors versus closing the doors. And if you, when you're playing college golf, you miss more school for golf. Think about your high school schedule. I mean, all the school that you're missing for high school, you miss a lot of school in college golf. And when you're playing, there's a whole lot of downtime. You're playing 36 holes. Some are 18, but some are 36. You're on the golf course for 8 or 10 hours. So if you're worried about a test or a paper that you have, that carries into your performance in your golf game. As Gene talked about, golf is very different from those reactionary sports where it's boom, 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 and it's happening like that. So, you know, as a coach, we would look for, how is this kid going to handle on the road? Does he have his grades and under control to where that's not going to creep into his golf performance? And so, yes, the golf is important, but make sure you're a well-rounded student because coaches do look for that.
So true. Oh my gosh. I used to get on everyone's Instagram. I would look at that stuff and I'd go, oh geez, we don't want her. That you ought to see this Instagram. So if your Instagram is a little crazy, clean it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should be very well-rounded because you can have a good player and they can still pull your whole team down just because they're a partier or their grades are bad or they don't want to go to class or they just so coaches are looking at everything.
I'd be, you two lived it as college coaches. So, when I talk to my students, this is what I would say, and I'd love to hear if you feel like I'm on the right path. It sounds like a lot of what you're just saying, but I said there's really 3 major things that you're looking at in being recruited as a golfer. Can you play? Can you handle it academically? Because you do, baseball and golf are the 2 sports that you miss the most classroom time, period, in college. And are you a good person? And those 3 things can be manifested in many different ways as far as what those are. But if you can check those 3 boxes, you're going to be recruitable. If one of those is missing, you better be really, really good at something else. Is that fair?
Very fair.
Yeah.
Spot on. Yeah.
Very good.
Well, great. So before we open it up to our Q&A portion, we'll go with one real quick thing. Is there any sort of advice or tips you have, maybe 1 or 2 things that players can do when they're coming out of the off season where they can, I guess, knock off the rust quicker and kind of get back into the swing of things quicker?
I would say don't let the rust accumulate. By doing some of the things that we've already talked about, and then get out and play. I mean, it's hard in the spring because the weather's spotty. You never know what you're going to have. They might only have weekends available, and it rains on both days of the weekends. But get out on the golf course. It doesn't have to be a tournament. Get out and play. Get out and do it. Just activate.
Yeah. Well,
Gene, I'm going to piggyback on that. I think that's spot on. So true. Because you got a lot of great indoor facilities where kids are practicing in the wintertime. They're in front of TrackMan or a simulator. And let's all remember, golf is played on the golf course. It's not played in the lab. So when it's springtime, does roll around, get on the golf course and play golf, and play some more and play golf. Yes.
Yeah, tournaments aren't always in the best conditions, are they?
Not at all. No. College events certainly aren't. Brad, echo that. But no, I mean, it's, when it comes to bad weather golf, mindset is so important on that. And if you go into it with the right mindset, you're going to have over half the field beat, 3/4 of the field beat on mindset alone. So, yeah, play golf. If it's windy out in the springtime, cold out in the springtime, get on the golf course as soon as you can and start playing.
Yeah, great stuff. This is, I think you got to get out and play. I think you got to bridge the gap also, because a lot of times people are inside and they're working on the simulators and finding out their distances on their clubs and that kind of thing. And if they're doing a lot of that, a lot of times they're getting, like Chris is saying, is you get so caught up in just the beating balls. What I would suggest right before you start tinkering with all that stuff, or after you've tinkered with all that stuff, don't be afraid to play in a simulator before you can get out and play, and start running your routine. Play golf, act like it's the real thing, even in a simulator. And then when you get to the range, before you start playing, start doing that again. Play on the range like you're playing golf. Run your full routine. Make sure you feel like you're playing golf. Pick different targets, that kind of thing. Because by that time, your distances, because you worked on a simulator and you said, okay, this is how much I'm hitting, how far I'm hitting it, and that kind of thing. And then work through that. And then one last thing is clean out your golf bag.
Yes.
Get rid of the old drinks, get rid of the old peanuts or whatever you got in there, and then put what you need in there for spring. If you need some hand warmers or something, be prepared. I see way too many golfers that aren't prepared to play spring golf. And so they get out there and they go, oh, I forgot my winter gloves, or I don't have a hat today, and I should have brought a jacket. Didn't think it was going to be windy out here today. The golf course is outside. It has wind, okay? So you may not feel it when you're walking out the house, but don't forget to do all that stuff. But be prepared.
That's great. And I'm going to piggyback a little more off that as well. And I'll tell my students in the fall and in the springtime as well, you don't deal with it as much in the spring because you have the longer daylight. The sun's out a little bit longer. But going into the winter, I tell the students, hey, guys, go out and play, even if it's for 4 holes, 5 holes. Get out with friends, play, get a little match and a little game going, so that when you're on hole 3, 4, and coming down the stretch in hole 5, you're learning how to get the golf ball in the hole. There's going to be plenty of time in the winter months to hit balls inside and do all that work. So what I'm saying is, if you have a small window of time after school, fall or spring, it might only be an hour of time, and you're choosing, boy, do I go to the driving range here or do I go to the first tee here? Go to the first tee, even if it's for an hour, even if it's for 3, 4, 5 holes, because you're going to learn something coming down the stretch on that 3rd, 4th, maybe it's that 5th hole if you're playing 5, that you're going to be able to carry into a tournament when you might be in contention. Maybe it's your high school qualifying round, or a college event that you're trying to qualify for the lineup. You're going to learn something because you're putting yourself in those moments on the golf course on a limited number of golf balls, and you're figuring out, how am I going to get this ball in the hole? We can all stand on the driving range and after 200 golf balls, well, we've got our swing grooves, right? But can you get the ball in the hole when it means something? So I'm a big believer in, if you got the ranges over here and the first tee's here, go to the first tee, limited number of golf balls you're going to have out there, and you got to get that golf ball in the hole. Because trust me, I know you're going to spend time on the range. We know, we see that with our students. They're going to spend time there. We know that. But let's get on the golf course and play.
Yeah.
It
I would
kind
say
of,
knock and rust off. Hit all the clubs.
Yes.
Not 3 clubs. Go through your bag when you're getting, especially when you're going back out in the spring.
it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, is get comfortable being uncomfortable. So if you're going out for that hour and it's cold and you're prepared for it to a certain degree, it does make golf a lot easier come spring or summer when the weather is nice and you're wearing short sleeves. So if you're able to play halfway decent when the weather is really bad, once again, you're getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and then that will make you better. That'll make you so much better. And then of course you're playing on all these different lies and different circumstances, which I think is great too. So.
Well, great. So for now, we will open it up to questions from anyone who has joined us here tonight. Feel free to unmute and ask a question, or if you feel more comfortable typing into the chat, you can go ahead and do that. And we did have a couple outside questions submitted. And I guess the first one we'll go with, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit throughout here, but someone asked how to go about setting goals for your upcoming season. Do you have any sort of quick tips for that? How to structure those goals and do things like that?
We always talk about using the acronym SMART: specific, meaningful, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So it's got to be a specific goal that you have, and then you can build other goals up to that. Meaningful, it has to be something that helps motivate you. Achievable, it can't be something you can't say, okay, my goal is, to qualify for Q school, when you haven't broken 90. So, it's something that's within reach. And that goes along with realistic. And then also time bound. When is it that I need to have this achieved by, so that way I can assess whether I've gotten there or not. So just from a general rule, that would be a decent guide anyway.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. Looks like we have a couple questions also from the audience. First one is, there's a tour in Cincinnati who offered to bump his daughter up to play with the older girls who are in the 13 plus age division. Said she turns 11 in February, and he's on the fence about whether or not that's the right decision, and wanted to know if college coaches have any view on younger players playing in older age brackets, if it's something that is recommended, anything like that.
I don't know. That's a good question. I think if she can play at that level, I guess, yeah. As a coach, she's probably not quite would be on my radar yet, but I guess if I saw that she was doing that.
Tiger never did.
What's that?
Tiger never did. He played his age bracket.
Yeah.
He won a lot of tournaments.
I was just.
Yeah, I don't know. I have mixed emotions on it. I feel like sometimes that's pushing somebody too much. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that person, it depends on the individual. Because if you go out there and all of a sudden you don't play well and you get beat, then what's the upside versus the potential downside? That's a tough one. I mean, I could see the advantages to it, but I could also find a whole lot of disadvantages. Yeah. And at 11, fall in love with the game.
Yeah.
Fall in love with the game.
Have fun with it. Yeah. Have fun with it.
100%. And it's tough. I'm just going to go back to the third, the tournament schedule. So make sure if you're doing that you still have those events where, to Gene's point, Tiger didn't do that, and he learned how to win, right? And he didn't skip a step. Tiger won at every single level: junior, older junior, collegiate, amateur, professional. He learned to win at every level. So I'm not opposed. If there's an 11-year-old girl who's winning some events, let her stay and keep learning how to win a little bit, right? That's okay. I heard something at the PGA show, the Teaching and Coaching Summit, which is coming up here real soon, that I hold to heart. And there was a guest speaker that was talking about, a lot of parents today want to fast track their kids and push them forward. And I truly hold this to heart. Never, and his point was, let a 5-year-old be a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old be a 10-year-old. Don't make a 10 or 11-year-old a 15-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 25-year-old. They're kids. Let them be kids. So I know it can be a tough situation. What do I do? But let them make sure you're balanced in your tournament schedule and you're not skipping a step. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well said.
Great. Our next question is, young people don't always think about mobility, they think about strength. What's a good way to work on mobility? And also, real quick, before I turn it over to our pros, this is a good segue. We do have another webinar that is on the schedule for middle of February that's all about fitness and training. So I will turn it over to them, but we will also have another one that focuses specifically on that for juniors.
And we're not doing that?
You didn't get my email yet?
No, that's a good thing.
Gene should be doing that. That's a good one for you, Gene.
Yeah, I mean, for mobility, you know, that's critical. I mean, certainly important. And being able to get assessed, and we can do those assessments as golf pros, you know, that have gone through TPI and things like that. But just because we can do the assessment doesn't mean that we're prescribing the solutions. You know, it's finding the right person locally that can go out and help you with some of that mobility. You know, whether it's a physical therapist, trainer, or whatever that might be. And it looked like Shar threw that one in there. So Bobby's pretty good at flexibility. So, but we'll check him out. We can measure him. I'll measure him when he comes in next.
Great. So, do we have any more final questions from the audience? If so, feel free to unmute and just say, hey, hold on. All right. Well, I think we are going to be all set then. If anyone did join late or there's something in here that you want to listen again, share it with someone else, this will be posted on our website as well, hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow. So keep your eyes open for that. I wanted to thank all of you for joining, and especially our three panelists, Chris, Gene, and Brad, for taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it, and I know all of our juniors do too. So thank you, everyone.